international law and conventions, and under supervision of the IAEA, will be pursuing our peaceful nuclear activities so that we will be able to use nuclear energy peacefully for peaceful purposes like power generation, medicine, and other areas. So the obstacle could be that the other party of the negotiations, if they should actually not adopt any serious stances or be influenced by others' pressure, we are prepared. It's not an easy path. It's kind of along the path up ahead, but through strong resolution, we will be able to continue the path to the very end, which its culmination will benefit Iran at P5+1. It will benefit Europe, the West, the region, and actually the whole world.
Mr. President, in your negotiations, will you also be aware of a very sensitive attitude and a suspicion, which always probably will persist, on the possible dual use of nuclear technology? And will you do everything in order to remove this suspicion?
Well, the reason basically for the NPT and also the reason for the actual foundation of the IAEA and actual the raison d'etre for the signing of the Safeguards Agreement was served the same fact that so that the countries could have peaceful activities under the supervision of the IAEA so that it will not be a source of concern for others. So it's the entire international regulations and conventions. We have accepted them all when it comes to nuclear story. We have accepted them, we have adopted them, we are acting in accordance with that. And as long as it's under supervision of the IAEA, Iran, like any other country that possess nuclear technology, that dual use that you just made a mention of, this also proves the same for the countries that have access. There are more than 40 countries that are nuclear capable, and they are making enrichment. So Iran will never accept any discrimination. But at the same time, Iran will follow all the international law and regulations and supervision of the IAEA and will act accordingly.
Mr. President, I would like to ask you a question concerning Syria, and I will not refer now to the Geneva II talks, but you are a country with a long civilization, and what we hear, the humanitarian tragedy is tremendous. Over 100 million people dead, millions of refugees or displaced people. Now my question is, as a country with a long civilization and a peace-loving country, as you said, we all have, of course, a moral obligation to stop this tragedy. What will you do in order to stop this tragedy? Soon.
Well, Syria is experiencing a great catastrophe. The greatest losses are being imposed on the innocent people of Syria, just like you mentioned. There are millions of innocent people who have been killed or injured or simply become homeless in this cold winter time. You see the situation of those internal displaced is really deplorable. So another source of regret is the presence of terrorist groups from across the region, even from other continents. They're all there. They've gathered in Syria, and their extremist action, the violence and the massacre. Then they simply slaughter the Syrian people, and sometimes they kill one another. This is a source of great regret. So Iran believes that everyone, all of us, need to make attempts to, in the first place, do things to bring an end to violence and war in Syria. And secondly, we should all try to push the terrorists out of Syria. And we need to recommend and advise the countries that are supporting terrorists that this is not in their interest. Then it will be their turn also in the future. They will see the same problem, they will experience the same fate. So we should also set the stage so that the opposition will sit at the negotiating table with the government. So the final solution is only a free election to be held in Syria. What the people vote for should be respected for all of us. No government, no power from outside Syria is able to decide or make any decision for the people of Syria, for any country. Everyone needs to, all of us need to help the people. So we have humanitarian philanthropic assistances, like including drugs, medicine, food that we're dispatching to the Syrian people. That's the way we're offering help. So all of us need to help the Syrian people. Everyone needs to help have the way for holding of a free and fair election in Syria. And the vote of the people, whatever it is, should be acceptable by everyone.
Mr. President, this means that we have as a first priority to stop the tragedy, second to fight terrorism, and number three, to make sure that Syria finds its own way to build a peaceful future. But let me come to another question, the last question. You mentioned the commitment of your country to establish peaceful relations, normal relations with all other countries in the world, and you emphasized particularly with all countries in the regions. My question is, do you include all countries?
Well, all countries that the Islamic Republic of Iran accords recognition to fall within the same circle. Yes, it's the East and the West, North and South. There is no exception. Well, we have had some antagonism with certain countries, but we want our future to be a better future so that we would be able to resolve the past issues so that we could have some healthy and sound relations with all countries.
So I repeat your last word, with all.
Yes, we said the same thing, all. Yes, we said that the whole countries that we have accord recognition to, we want to have good relations with them all.
Which you have officially recognized or may officially recognize. But thank you very much, Mr. President, for joining us this morning to provide us with such a comprehensive view of your stand, your intentions. We take home your message to your wish to integrate Iran as an active and peaceful player into the global community. Thank you.
President Hassan Rouhani there addressing people at the World Economic Forum. He was taking some questions there. Just a quick highlight of what he had to say with regards to Iran's nuclear program. He said development, of course, relates to technology as well, and that is why Iran is pursuing its civilian nuclear program. He said he would like to expressly and clearly announce that nuclear weapons have no place in Iran's policy, and Iran has no need of these weapons. He said what we have achieved with regards to the Geneva agreement with a P5+1 group of countries, he said what we have achieved is just a prelude to agreements and future interactions. There are differences of opinions, but there are common interests like security, stability, fighting extremism and terrorism, and of course economic development. He said ties to Europe, because of the implementation of this nuclear deal, will be normalized, and Iran's relations with the U.S. have entered a new phase, with both sides having cooperated to try and solve this standoff on Iran's nuclear program. He went on to say that Iran is determined to hammer out a comprehensive agreement with the P5+1. There is a strong resolution on the part of Iran to achieve this goal. He said Iran has accepted and signed the NPT and other international regulations and conventions to ensure transparency and to show its good intentions vis-a-vis its nuclear program. But he also mentioned that Iran will not accept discrimination. This, of course, slamming the double standards of the part of the international community with regards to nuclear weapons stockpiles of certain countries, as well as Israel. Now, on the topic of Syria, as he was asked, he said Syria is experiencing a catastrophe, and he called on all countries to work together to resolve this crisis. He said that the final solution is for the Syrian people to decide for themselves through a free, open, democratic process, that is, free elections, and the world to respect the decision made by the Syrian people. His message was that of cooperation, opening up Iran to its neighboring countries. He said Iran is ready to open up trade, political, economic, and social relations with all its neighbors, and to promote economic development of Iran and the region as a whole. He said extremism and terrorism must be fought through all-sided development, economic, social, and political arenas all together. He said if the rights of the peoples and their demands are not listened to, security will be threatened, and everyone should be given the freedom and right to make their choices. Now, President Rouhani also ended off with his proposal on energy security. He said Iran is prepared, based on its own resources, to provide secure energy at a global level in the form of long-term cooperation with different partners and organizations. Iran can play a role in converting energy into lasting security and peace based on the country's geostrategic interests. We'll bring you more on Hassan Rouhani's comments, of course, and more analyses in our later programs here on Press TV, of course, and there's always presstv.ir.